Is Bitcoin still worth buying, or is it simply too expensive? That's a question I get asked a lot. We're going to cover that in this morning's video. In addition to that, we're going to talk about becoming a Satoshi millionaire. What is a Satoshi millionaire? How do I become a Satoshi millionaire? And finally, what would it cost to become a Satoshi millionaire? If that sounds good, I'd ask you to smash the like button. Let's get into it. Good morning, everybody. Now, before we do that, let's have a look at the cryptocurrency prices. On platforms like Altcoin Trader, we can see cryptocurrency Bitcoin specifically trading at 1.6 million Rand for a coin. Let's go internationally. We can see Bitcoin above the 87,000 US dollar mark for a single coin. Ethereum comfortably above 2,000 US dollars. I think the general sentiment over the last 24 hours is cryptocurrency is in the green. We're moving up, which is incredibly good news for those of you that are invested in cryptocurrencies. Now, very quickly, let's talk about what a Satoshi millionaire is. Let me explain it this way. If you have a Rand or a dollar, you have 100 cents. If you have a Bitcoin, you have 100 million cents. Now, I think in the future, people are no longer going to be talking about a Bitcoin. They're going to be talking about Satoshis. And the reason for this is we expect Bitcoin to go up to the 1 million US dollar mark and beyond in the next couple of years. Guys, this is not financial advice, but these are very realistic predictions that we are seeing all over the financial space and all over the internet. Bitcoin is going to become digital gold. It is already digital gold, and it is going to breach the 1 million US dollar mark. Now, let's talk about why it will be denominated. You see, because Bitcoin is going to be so expensive, no one's going to be talking about millions of dollars when you want to transact or buy a bit of Bitcoin or add Bitcoin to your portfolio. So we are going to break it down and we're going to be saying, I would like to buy X amount of Satoshis. And that is why I think it is very important to become a Satoshi millionaire while you can still afford it and while it is still affordable. Now let's talk about debasing currencies and denomination of currencies. Guys, this has happened previously. Historically, Zimbabwe, when their currency was being debased and hyperinflation hit, they simply started lobbing zeros off. In other words, if you had $100, Zimbabwean dollars, the government, the regulators, the authorities would come off and say, lob off 2 zeros, now you've got 1, as opposed to 100. Now, Bitcoin being the absolute opposite of fiat currencies that are inflationary, Bitcoin is, of course, deflationary, which means it's going to move in the other direction. So we're no longer going to talk about 1 Bitcoin, we're going to talk about 1 Satoshi. Hope that makes sense. So if you wanted to become a Satoshi millionaire, you would simply need to own 1 million Satoshis. So let's look at that. How much would it cost to own 1 million Satoshis? Well, owning 1 million Satoshis would mean that you would have to own, in Bitcoin, in current value, 0.01 Bitcoin, which is about, and this figure is not exactly right, would be about 870 US dollars. So it's still very affordable. How would you become a Satoshi millionaire? Okay, if you had to go to a platform like Altcoin Trader and you would put in a buy offer for Bitcoin, you would need to buy 0.01 Bitcoin. As you can see, that would currently cost you about 16,000 Rand. So that's right. To become a Satoshi millionaire, you would have to invest around about 16,000 Rand or 870 US dollars. Now let's circle back to the question, is it still worth buying Bitcoin or is it simply too expensive? I would like you to consider rephrasing or reframing the psychological aspect of Bitcoin. Instead of owning 0.01 Bitcoin, think of yourself as owning 1 million Satoshis. I'd like to suggest that in the future, that is going to be a very, very powerful thing to own, a very powerful part of your crypto portfolio. Guys, this is just a concept. This is something that you might want to do, is own 1 million Satoshis. It's currently still affordable. It can be picked up on platforms like Altcoin Trader for as little as 16,000 Rand. This isn't always going to be the case. Guys, I'd like you to like and subscribe if you like this type of content. If you think that psychological aspect and the way that you consider Bitcoin, instead of considering it as Bitcoin, but considering it as 1 million Satoshis, could really help you to stay away from all the other cryptocurrencies and looking for the next best thing. Any cryptocurrency portfolio that's worth its salt starts with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the foundation. There are many, many thousands of other cryptocurrencies you can look into, but I would suggest get yourself 1 million or 100,000 or even 10,000 Satoshis before you start going down the list. That's it from me. I'm out.